Hi, everyone. We're really excited to be on our sixth season, episode one, with a very, very special guest. With us today, kicking off this season, powered by Kind Lending, is Tim Braheem, founder and CEO of Performance Experts. There's a lot of great businesses you've been involved with, Tim. We're going to get into those. But I want to welcome you to our podcast. Thank you so much for being here, man. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure, and I'm just grateful to those that are listening to be able to help out in any way I can.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you help a lot of people already, Tim. We're going to get into that as well right now. But Tim, when we kick off the podcast, we've had a lot of guests, and all the guests share, this is obviously our audience, a lot of different people, but the majority of the people listening are mortgage originators in the mortgage business. And I know you have a great background in that. Maybe share to everybody listening how you got into this business and how it's evolved to where you're at now, because what you're doing right now is very special. So let's talk about that first.
Okay, thanks. I'll I'll
Yeah,
I'll, I'll share a story with you that I know will resonate for you as a
yeah,
big baseball fan. So,
yeah,
when I was a little kid, I asked my dad when I was 8 years old uh, if Vin Scully, the famous LA Dodger play-by-play announcer, got to go to the games for free. And my dad started laughing and he goes, "Of course, he gets paid to be there." And I declared at 8 years old, that's what I'm going to do when I get older. Is I'm going to be a baseball announcer. I went to
yeah.
school for it. I was the play-by-play announcer at my university on
Wow.
radio.
Yeah,
And graduated with a degree in broadcasting, and I was off to the races. But it was 1990, and we're in the middle of the Gulf War, and
yeah,
nobody was hiring. Everybody was firing. We're in a recession, and it was tough. And I needed to make some money. So while I was trying to become a sportscaster, a buddy of mine from college had just started doing loans in Chatsworth, California. His name was Chris Chudikoff, and he said, "Hey, you got to come hang out with me at work." And I went and I spent some time with him for a couple of days, and I realized I actually had some energy for this. Like this could be fun. So I started part time initially as a loan originator, but was really lucky, Delfino, to
mm,
have success right away. I mean, my first 6 months
yeah,
in the business, I made like $30,000, which was a lot of money back then, especially for somebody who's 25 years old.
mhm,
And so I dove in full time and just became. It was the first time in my life that I didn't have a ceiling on how much money I could make. So there's some part of the inner experience for me that was really about like being able to chase the carrot, right? Like that was out there,
mhm,
like no limit as to how much I can make. And got really lucky and became very successful at it. Started my own mortgage company in 1995. Was one of the top originators in the United States for 8 consecutive years, top 50 for 8 consecutive years, and then started this thing called Loan Toolbox and
yeah,
taught 10,800 loan originators back in the early 2000s as their coach in some ways or mentor. And then I retired and I went and moved to Italy with my
yeah,
family, lived there for a year, and came back, went through a challenging situation in my life, which was a divorce, and
mhm,
um, needed to do something to fill my time because I was pretty lonely. And
mhm,
one of the things that I'd always been drawn to was the topics of personal development, spiritual development, psychology, things like that. So I went back to school, got a master's degree in spiritual psychology, and then became a business and life coach. And I was texting with Barry Habib the other day.
yep,
We've known each other for 30 years, and he was saying, I could see how much you love being the coach that you are to so
mhm,
many people. And I said, if you can believe it or not, like Performance Experts is actually my longest career now. I've been doing that for 13 and a half years, which is longer than I was even an originator. He
yeah,
was like, wow, I can't believe how fast the time has gone by. So yeah, that's what I do. I
yeah,
also founded this latest endeavor, which is the Loan
yep,
Atlas.
yep,
Uh, and I'm really excited about that. So my passion, and thanks for indulging me with that quick story, but my passion
yeah.
is to help people. God gave me a gift of being a pretty good teacher, and I just like to use that to serve other people, and it gives me a lot of purpose.
Yeah, no, it does. I love, Barry's a good friend. I'm glad you known him for a long time too. He's been on the podcast a couple times too. Great guy. He's part of our Vibe event as well too. So we're excited about that. It's funny how people just find the forks in the road and their paths into what they do. you started with the broadcasting. That's funny. My son's a big baseball guy, and he wants to do that. He wants to go into, obviously being a professional baseball player, but you know how that goes. But obviously, the broadcasting piece is interesting in how you got into that. And what moving away, and then coming back to the United States, and how was that experience? I mean, just leaving from Southern California, right? You live in Ventura County. Is that where you live right now, or where are you at right now?
No, I actually live in LA County now, but
LA County. Yeah.
I used to live in
Yeah.
Ventura County, correct.
How big was that experience moving from the United States to Italy? Big
I
change,
mean,
right?
it was truly life changing, and that's a cliche, but I mean, in this case, like if you knew the whole story, which I won't get into, you go, yeah, that
Yeah.
was life changing. I mean,
Yeah.
I made some unbelievable friends that are still,
Yeah.
very close friends of mine to this day. I go back to Italy every year, at least one time.
That's awesome.
I mean, there are so many branches that have spawned from that tree of living that 1 year abroad, and that will forever have an impact on my life. In fact, I really would love to go back and live there again for a period of time. I mean, I miss it very much.
Yeah.
Italy is in my heart. I mean, it's my favorite place in the world.
It's funny. I went to an all boys Catholic school here in San Diego called St. Augustine High School, and there's 15 of us that stay in touch quite a bit, but there's 6 of us that are always constantly communicating. One of my friends is leaving to Italy permanently in June, so his wife's from Italy. She got a job at the university. She's from there, and now he's leaving. So I'm sure that he'll have an experience like you. He's been going 2 times a year to Italy, so he says it's beautiful. So now he's leaving permanently. Southern California guy. So we'll
It's a
say that.
very different life there. I mean,
Yeah.
they appreciate the little things so much more than we do here. Good
Mhm.
food, good company, good wine,
Yeah.
friendship, family. It's a very, very centering place for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of talking about all the people that you work with, especially since a lot of our audience, Tim, is mortgage professionals, and along the way, you've helped so many people build your career. And I want to get into the people you had on your podcast, the 360 experience. You have your own podcast, which is great. But what has been some of the big um, lessons that you've learned as you coached people to become better in their profession? Let's start on the professional side first. Um, Originators, how do you help them get over their barriers? Because that's a big deal, right? As part of our business. So maybe you can share some of the stories and experiences that you had on that front.
Yeah, we all have limiting belief patterns in
Mhm.
our consciousness. So,
Yeah,
based upon our childhood, based upon how we were groomed, if you will, by our family, by our teachers, and by our life experiences,
that's
and
true.
some of us have um, thought patterns that motivate us to achieve and to conquer and to continually remake ourselves. And some of us have thought patterns based upon our experiences that serve as glass ceilings or limitations on what we can have in the way of business success.
Mhm.
But it's an inside job. I mean, the work is always an inside job. I mean, we can focus on the tactics, and they're very, very important. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why people have call reluctance. There's a reason why people are not great at leadership. There's a reason that people don't manage their time well and chase shiny objects and are finding that they just can't ever get ahead because they're always chasing after things. There's a reason why people are locked into processing their loans when they should be originating new loans and trusting. And the underneath um, most of our experiences is a 4-letter word that starts with F, and don't worry, I'm not going to turn this into a rated R show. The word is
It's all
fear.
good.
Fear
Yeah.
is a really big component to our human experience, and fear can be a catalyst, which it has been for me in many cases in my life, and it can also be a great hindrance. So let me give you an example. For me, um, the fear that I would say that is most prominent within me is the fear of disappointing people. So the fear of not being liked, not being approved of goes back to my childhood. So I've used that as a catalyst as a business professional for over 30 years now to have tremendous success because I'm very driven to not disappoint. So I am always, trying to go one extra mile. I'm always trying to seek for perfection. And that is a blessing. yet again, it is also a curse.
Mhm.
And the way that it's a curse is that if that fear is running rampant and driving me to new heights of quote unquote financial success, it can rob me of presence and connection with others, family, friends, work colleagues, etc., because I'm going so hard and so focused on making sure that I don't disappoint anyone. Other people may have an entirely different fear set that is in place. The fear of making a mistake, which causes people to freeze and not do anything at all, or the fear of not having all of the best components in place. So they are paralyzed constantly by chasing all the shiny objects of all of the great ideas. So I have to work with my clients on this subject matter. I mean, the key battle that we're all fighting is between the ears. I mean, that is the war that we are constantly waging. And your mindset, your energy, your what's the word that phrase that I'm looking for? I just drew a blank.
Yeah.
Your self-awareness,
Self-awareness.
or emotional intelligence was the word that I was looking for, are all huge components of what ultimately will be your business success. I mean, this may sound like I'm getting into psychology, and I am,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I can't coach somebody on the tactics without getting under the hood and helping them remove the barriers that are getting in the way of them executing on those tactics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a 50,000-foot overview on that. I mean, I can drill down
Right.
more specific if you want.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the in between the ears is have I um met successful people. They learn how to drive that fear, or learn how to, I don't know if controlling it, Tim, is the word, but learn how to live in it, and learn how to grow within that fear. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to.
successful people, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to have an awareness
Awareness, yeah.
of what the fear is, and then
Yeah.
I think that the key thing is that you have to kind of gently lean into it, right? Like,
Yeah.
the fear is often greater in our mind than it is in reality. So, um, there are many people that we all know in the world that are controlled by their fear and they don't even know it.
That's right.
They're truly unconscious, and that's not a critical term. They're quite literally unconscious to some of the behavioral thought patterns that are running in the background that are driving behaviors that are not serving them. So the first step in the process is to slow it all down and
Yeah.
take a step back. And one of our jobs as coaches with myself and Julie and Scott, who are my
Uh-huh.
two colleagues, is to hold up the mirror for someone to see the reflection back on them as to what's really happening, so they can have that awareness of, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, this is what I do. And this
Yeah.
is, by the way, one of the, I'm an avid meditator. I've been meditating
Yeah.
for 30 years now.
Yeah.
And people are always tripped out when they say, how long do you meditate for? And I go, I mean, this morning I meditated for an hour. Some days it's 45 minutes, but
Yeah.
it's at least 30 every
Right.
day, and preferably closer to an hour. And they're like, geez, I don't know how you do that. Like, how do you sit there with your eyes closed, with, doing nothing? I mean, like, my mind just goes crazy. It just thinks.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. That's what the mind does.
Right.
If you watch the thoughts, it gives you all the information that you need, which is why a long meditation can be very, very valuable, because you continually come up against yourself. You
Right.
continually run right up against all of those thoughts that are repetitive, that are running in the background, and you get to see them for what they are. And it is from that place of awareness you can start to work on reframing those thoughts. So that's a key component to it. Is you've probably heard of neurolinguistic programming, which Tony Robbins has been, practicing teaching for, 4 decades now. It was a psychological modality that was developed in the late 1960s. Um,
Yeah.
NLP and reframing behavioral thought patterns and burning new uh, thought patterns into our neural pathways in our brain is
Yeah.
key. And, we kind of make fun of things like affirmations and things like that, but they actually work.
They
We are
do.
driven by the repetitive thought loop, and sometimes it just takes slowing it down, seeing it for what it is, not being critical of it, because there's no payoff in the self judgment, and then saying, okay, what's a new, like, I like to, in closing, use this metaphor. It's like that repetitive thought pattern that you're running, that I'm
Mhm.
running, that everybody that's listening is running, and there are several of them that go back to our childhood,
Yes.
are thoughts that have been driving our behaviors for the entirety of our life. And it's like an old program running on your computer. And sometimes you got to slow it down and say, okay, I'm going to drag that one into trash and I'm going to lay a new program over it, or lay a new program onto my hard drive that is the
Mhm.
new thought that I want to embody and that I want to practice and make a habit, because your thoughts do drive your ultimate experience of life.
They do. I can't tell you how much that's resonating. It's probably resonating. I know it's resonating with people listening and watching this. Um, from a personal experience, I grew up in an environment where, hey, what's that feeling? You don't know what those feelings are. You talk about your childhood on one of your podcasts, and you think about how the evolution, just in my family, is that I've grown up going through something traumatic when I was very young, um, in a car accident situation. I won't get into details of that, but it kind of makes you who you are for the rest of your life and your thought processes and all that. And at the time, you didn't really understand what that was. And as you've gotten older, and the meditation piece, I speak about that a lot, Tim. I think it's a big tool into people that are successful. And making sure that those thoughts that you have are positive in any way you can, doing that. So it's funny how the evolution of, I don't know if it's more over the last 10 years. I've noticed that, I don't know if you noticed this, and I want your feedback on that, but just, the thought process, meditation, positive thoughts. You said people made fun of the affirmations, but they do work. Like you said, that they do work. But have you felt that now mindset, now people diving deeper into meditation and positive thought and being open to speak to someone if they have to and all that, has that gotten better over the last 10, 15 years? Or has that always been there, but just now with so much people speaking about it, I feel it's more popular, more people are open to that.
No,
What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree with you. I mean, I think that,
Yeah,
there is a sea change taking
yeah,
place. And I think people
yeah,
are becoming more aware. I
that's
mean,
right.
sometimes it's hard to see, right? Because there's so
Yeah,
much stuff that goes on in the world right now that makes you feel like, man, we're going backwards. We're
right.
at
Yeah,
war in three parts in the world right now, and all these types of
right.
things. And there's a lot of negative energy and a lot of
Yeah,
rhetoric and a lot of fighting and arguing. But there's also simultaneous to that an awakening that's happening, where people are
yeah,
starting to get more comfortable with
that's right.
with the languaging around meditation, and or taking control of their thoughts. I mean, can I
That's
bring
right.
this can I land this plane in the space of the mortgage industry, since so many of the people are listening?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
let me give an example, and I'm going to kind of go off here for a few minutes, but this is seems like a good time, and it just kind
yeah,
of popped into my head. All right, so
yeah,
I say to loan originators on a consistent basis, like, you must stay in touch with your past client database. I mean,
yeah,
that CRM of yours is your recurring income
right.
stream, and that's your gold mine. And what are you doing? Loan originators love to talk about how borrowers and referral partners are not loyal. Okay. But loyalty is not gifted to you. Loyalty is earned. And loyalty is a virtue and a value that one holds within themselves. And the average human being, not all, but most, hold the value of loyalty very high on their list of values that they aspire to abide by. But when we don't nurture the connection, and the connection starts to sever over time, it becomes a lot less difficult for someone to face that value and virtue that they hold high to them. So if I'm staying in close communication with you and you're a past client of mine, and I'm showing that I truly care about you, when it's time for you to do another loan, you're going to be confronted with the subject matter that you hold highly in your value set, which is loyalty. And then you're going to likely work with me because you're going to feel like, hey, I kind of owe it to him. He's earned it by staying in touch with me, and I like him. He's
Right.
my friend. So I say to loan originators, like, how frequently do you call your past clients? Oh, what am I going to call them for, Tim? Like, I mean, they're all at 2 7/8, 3 1/8, 3 1/4. Like, I don't know what to say. Okay. So that's a story. That's a story right there. That's a thought pattern. We're going to, get back to what we were talking about here. That's a belief
Right.
that you have, that the reason that you are calling that person is because you have to try to figure out a way to get a deal. That's the objective. Okay. But what if that weren't the objective? See, that's an old belief. That's an old story that somebody taught you when you first got in the business, that CRM of yours is something that you nurture for the purposes of getting a deal. Now you're an attachment to the outcome. And when you're an attachment to the outcome, getting a deal, that becomes an incredibly difficult conversation when current rates are at 7 and that person's at 3 1/8. I get
Sure.
it. I'm really well scripted. It's definitely my superpower. I don't have a script for that one, Delfino. Like
Yeah.
that's a tough sell. But
Yeah.
what if we challenge that belief? And what if we replaced that belief with no, the objective of calling my past client CRM is to be their friend, to say hello, to ask them how they're doing, to get a little personal with them when you know that
Right.
they're a San Diego Padres fan and,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, like that sucked this weekend when they got swept by the Dodgers, but like we'll
Yes.
get them next time.
Now we're gonna talk baseball, Tim.
I worked it in there. I snuck it in. Or hey, I
Yeah.
saw on Facebook that you and your family were in Cabo San Lucas, and my family and
That's
I are
right.
going there for this summer for vacation. Looked like you
Yeah.
guys had a great time. I wanted to see how you're doing. What if that were the objective? You see, if that's the objective, is to just call and say hi, to put a smile on their face, to remind them that you exist, to show them that you care. Now all of a sudden, it's a very different conversation.
Mhm.
And now we start to lower people's guard because it's not a sales call.
Right.
They're now open to connection. We start to transcend the relationship from Tim, who's my loan originator, to Tim, who's my friend who happens to be a loan originator. And
Mhm.
now we have the fertile soil for loyalty, for not just them to come back, but for them to refer people to you because they want to help you, because you've shown that you care. Marcus Aurelius once said 2,000 years ago, the great Roman Stoic and Roman
Mhm.
Stoic and emperor
Mhm.
once said, we only get what we want if we help others get what they want.
That's right.
So it starts with us helping others get what they want, and then the rest takes care of itself. So this would be an example, and thanks for indulging me with that example, but like this would be
That's
an
right.
example of, if you have a belief that you're holding in your consciousness that the only reason you should make that call is to try to figure out how to get a deal, you're going to hit a roadblock. You're going to have call reluctance because you don't want to sound stupid. You don't know what
Mhm.
to say. And you're just going to let more and more time go by. And the more time that goes by, actually, the worse you're going to feel because you told them you were going to stay in touch with them. And now the next thing you know, it's been 3 years and you haven't called anybody in your past client CRM. And now you start playing another narrative, which is, I can't call them because they're all mad at me. No,
Yeah.
they're not mad at you. They're not even thinking about you.
That's
But I
right.
know that path because I've seen it far too many times with originators. Then now you have the massive call reluctance of like, I don't even really have a CRM because I haven't stayed in touch with any of them. And none of them really even know who I am anymore. And now we start playing that narrative. Okay, so like, what if we reverse engineer all of this and look at it from a perspective of the loan officer with the most friends wins?
Yeah.
That's really the formula that's always been and always will be. How many connections do you have that are real connections? How many people know you, like you, respect you, and trust you? And and that's the game that we're ultimately playing. But that requires a new narrative being rewritten. And that's kind of an example of like how I would work with a client to help them see that there is a different belief here that should be uh, running your day.
Yeah. Dang, Tim, that's very, I don't know, deep is the word I'm thinking, but I'm sure there's a better word, but that's a lot of things to digest because I think a lot to digest because people watching this, it's a relative example of what's happening right now, Tim. People are saying, I was on the phone with somebody the other day. They're like, Dell, most of my clients did such a really good job of getting them in at 2.5, 2.8753. I mean, what am I talking about? And that's a live example. Happened last week. I have found, Tim, I'll tell you, people watching this also AEs, and I have found the people that work with the brokers, the account executives, when they go into an office, Tim, they don't speak about anything work related at all. They make a connection with them as a person. Okay. So they'll go in there and talk about Padres. You and I talk about baseball. When I was in AE, I never, and I would go in the field with managers and the AEs that I go out with now, they speak about their family. They speak about their favorite vacation spots. They notice something in their office. They make a personal connection. And I think at times, the people don't want to make that extra effort. Do you think that the world of COVID changed that, Tim? Do you think that being behind a desk changed that for such a long time, like a year and a half, and everybody was just so busy that people lost that connection? Or you think that it's coming back more with it being released? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, how did that change?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
I haven't pondered that. So this
Yeah.
is a little bit stream of consciousness. I think COVID
Mhm.
did have an impact on that, Delfino, in the sense that
Yeah.
people got used to doing business in the medium that we're on right
Yeah.
now rather
That's
than
right.
belly to belly. Okay. So there is
Right.
that component to it. However, I think it's also a result of a little bit of a deeper issue that I'll explain that I think is important for everybody to understand. So
Yeah.
when we are, let me think about how I want to frame this up. Okay, so when we are operating under the hormones of stress, now I wouldn't take that phraseology lightly. Over the last
Mm.
18 to 24 months, just about everybody in the mortgage business has been consistently operating under the hormones of stress.
That's right.
They've watched their loan pipeline shrink. They've been wondering how long this is going to take before rates come back down. They have, in some cases, had to start living off of their savings account or borrowing off their credit cards. They've had to say goodbye to good people that they never thought that they'd have to say goodbye to, that went to war with them in 2020 and 2021 and helped them fund a lot of loans. And now they're having to let them go. It's been hard
Yes.
and it's been stressful. So, what happens when we're in a stressful situation biochemically? Okay, this is important for everybody to understand this, because without this understanding, you can easily fall into self-judgment. And that's the furthest thing that I'd want you to be evaluating. I would want you to stay more in the space of curiosity and openness to, hey, wonder what's going on here. So, in the center of our head, in each one of us, straight down from the top, is a gland referred to as the master gland. It's called the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is referred to as the master gland because it is quite literally the pharmacy of our body. Now, bear with me, okay? Don't think
Mhm.
I'm getting all weirded out on you all.
Not at all, man.
It's really,
Go ahead.
really important science for you to understand.
Yeah.
So all day long, when we are engaged in activity, we open our phones and Bitcoin is crashing, or mortgage-backed securities are having a terrible day, or that appraisal got cut. When this happens, when these fear-based experiences happen and these thoughts of worry come into our consciousness, the pituitary gland kicks off chemicals, hormones, drugs into our body. This is happening all day long in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
So it would be like, let's use a provocative example. If I came running at you right now with a knife in my hand, the first thought that you would have is, I'm in danger. And then the pituitary gland would start kicking off chemicals based upon that thought. What are the chemicals? The fight or flight drugs. Adrenaline, so you could run faster and be stronger. Serotonin, which would make your focus very tunneled, very narrowed, to where everything else would leave your consciousness. You'd be focused on one thing, me and the knife. Endopinephrine, norepinephrine, and a whole slew of other chemicals
Right.
that your body would then be operating under. Now, there's no difference from that appraisal getting cut and me coming after you for a knife. Fear is fear. Worry is worry. So most originators over the course of the last 18 to 24 months have been focused on their survival of self because they haven't been able to focus on anything else. When you think about it, when a deal blows up, you've all had this experience, an appraisal gets cut. Okay. And it takes you down for the day. You had a whole bunch of other things you were planning on doing, but you couldn't get your mind off of it. You were
Yeah.
solely focused on, how do I fix this? Because this relationship with this real estate agent is going to fall apart. And then the day ends and you feel like, man, I didn't get anything done today. And there's all these other important things. Yeah, you were operating under all of those drugs that are kicked out of your pituitary gland and dominate your experience. Okay. So why is this important to understand? Okay. Just go back to Marcus Aurelius' quote. We only get what we want if we help others get what they want. What that is saying is that put yourself aside and put your focus on the other person. How can you help them? How can you serve them? How can you be kind to them? How can you make a difference in their life? Just like you said, the top originators, or when you were in AE, they didn't talk about
Mhm.
business. Exactly. Okay.
That's
Now,
right.
when all I happen to be blessed to be friends with and coach some of the greatest originators this industry's ever seen. I mean,
Mhm.
people like Greg Kingsbury, Mike Watson, Holly Walther, who you listen to on my podcast, Sam
Yep.
Rosenblatt. I mean, these are all originators that are doing 25, 30 loans a month right now in this market. And in a great market, they're doing 50 or 60. And the common denominator of all of those people is that they've gone about approaching relationships with referral partners and borrowers in the same way. So let's talk about realtors right now.
Yeah.
So when I was an originator, I used to make the critical mistake for the first several years of going wide and not deep. And I would pursue 30 or 40 different real estate agents, and I'd have casual acquaintances with a bunch of them, and I'd scratch and claw for a deal here and a deal there, and there was no loyalty. Okay. Then I finally figured it out. I figured out that I need to take an entirely different approach to cultivating these relationships. And this literally is about me interviewing them for the opportunity to work with me. And it's about me developing connection with them so I'm attractive to them. It's not about me selling from a place of attachment. When I am selling from a place of trying to convince, coerce, control, manipulate, okay, that's a low vibrational frequency energy that repels people. They have to put their guard up. Okay.
Right.
You've experienced that before as
Yeah.
an originator. If you're listening to this, okay, you've pursued with your all the slick scripts and this and that, and they have all the objections. They're telling you all the reasons. Well, I have another lending relationship, or my owner broker requires me to give out 3 business cards. They've got all of the excuses. Those excuses are coming from a place of them putting their guard up because they feel the energy of you being attached to trying to convince them of something. And when I realized that that's the exact opposite path, everything changed. So I'd go into these appointments, and I'll never forget the first realtor that I did this with was a lady
Yeah.
named Kathy McLean, who is a big time, top producing, high end real estate agent in Westlake Village. And I got an appointment with her, and I asked her for a half hour, and I went and I sat with her in her office, and I simply made it about her. I didn't
Mm.
feel any, and all of those aforementioned originators that I just mentioned all have the same approach. The first meeting or two should not be about you at all. You shouldn't be talking about your services, what you can do for them, none of that. Okay. That's going to cause their guard to go up. You should be talking about them. You should be present with them. So I'd ask questions like, so how long you been in the real estate business? And like, what is it that you love about being a realtor? And I'd
Yeah.
listen, and they'd open up and they'd share. And then maybe I'd ask a follow-up question to their answer. And I'd ask another question, like, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it over your business right now and change one thing, what would you want to change? And then they'd really open up and they'd let some of the air out of the tire, and they'd complain
Yeah.
to me about their personal assistant, or how, the owner broker takes too much of a rake off the top, or their marketing's not working, or whatever. And I just keep listening. Then I'd ask them a question about, like, when you're not selling real estate, like, what do you love to do? Like, what are your hobbies? What makes life meaningful for you? And then they tell me about their travels, and they tell me how they love to play pickleball, or they love golf, or whatever. And before you know it, 30 minutes goes by and I know a lot about them. And I look at my watch and I said to Kathy, I'm like, gosh, I can't believe how fast the time went by. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. Thank you so much for the time. Oh, no, no, we can keep going. If you have more
Yeah.
time, I have more time. Oh,
Right. Right.
great.
Right. Right.
So we talked for another 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I look at my watch. I'm like, no, I actually do really have to go because I have another appointment at the top of the hour. I go, I'd love to get together with you again if you'd be interested. It's really been nice to get to know you. And then she hit me with the magic words that made me realize this is the approach that I'm taking right here. She said, well, I'm very loyal.
Yeah.
She brought up that value and virtue. I'm very
Right.
loyal. I said, "Oh, okay, great. What do you mean?" And she said, well, I've been working with the same lender from Bank of America for the last 8 years. And, I send him all my business. Oh gosh, Kathy, I'm so sorry if I gave you the impression that this conversation was about me trying to convince you to work with me. My goodness, I'm sorry. I would never want to impose upon you in that way.
Yeah.
I realize that it takes time to get to know people. And, this is the first of what will hopefully be many meetings where we just get to know each other and mutually evaluate whether or not it would make sense for us to work together in the future.
Yeah.
And and did we get together again? Yes. Did we start working together fairly soon after that? Yes. Did I work with her the rest of my career? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
But it started with me lowering her guard. I want to put all these pieces together now for everybody. I didn't feel compelled or attached to convincing her of anything. I went in with curiosity and an openness to evaluate whether or not this feels like a good connection. And I saw her. Okay. I want everybody to hear that. I saw her as a human being. I took an interest in her, and we all inherently love to be seen. And from that place of being seen, we feel safe. And when we feel safe, we lower our guard. And when we lower our guard, there's an availability for connection to occur. Okay. And that is ultimately what makes business not only more successful, but Delfino more enjoyable, because you
Mhm.
then end up working with people that you like. There were people that I did this same approach with that I ended up not asking for the second appointment, because
Mhm.
after the first meeting, I realized I don't want to work with this guy or this
Yeah.
gal. They're not my tribe. I don't feel a resonance with them. Wouldn't you rather know that now than 6 months from now when you've gone through two terrible deals with them and they've made your life miserable? You
Yeah.
know, so see, this is the kind of stuff that I think a lot of originators need to understand. So back to your question and in closing, I do think that people have lost the art of connection because they're
Yeah.
hiding behind this medium as a result of COVID, like you said. And I think that right now there's a tremendous opportunity in light of the NAR ruling for you to really connect with real estate agents and help them.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, this is the first time, Tim, in a long time that I'm taking a lot of notes of what you're saying on a podcast. I mean, what you're saying is gonna touch a lot of people. It is because it's resonating with the environment that we're in. You know what my dream, Tim, is? It like I was talking to someone that wants to get into the industry probably a month ago, and he's like, I was telling him about how I started, why kind, why we're in it, and he's like, I like that's an old school approach. It said to me that you meet somebody in person, that you go to a Starbucks. And I think it might be, I guess, old school, but I've always been relationship. But I think that's always been the school. I think that
100%, bro.
it's always been like, how can I get to know you? I spoke to a broker of mine when I was in an AE yesterday because his daughter went to Baylor, and I had spoken to him in probably like 6 months. They have an AE, they have an RVP they work with, but I called him up and I said, "Hey Jeff, what do you think about Baylor?" And it was like I talked to him yesterday, Tim. It was we caught up like I talked to him yesterday, and
Yeah.
because I got to know him as a person for so many years, that changed that relationship with us. And I think I go back to what I said: the people that are successful, and you're just confirming everything that how this business is done. It's kind of like it's the foundation also, Tim, what kind lending is. It really is. The relation piece is a big piece. I'm blessed to get to meet you through somebody we met at Kind Lending, loan officers, and it's all about the connection piece. And I can't agree with you more, man. Like this not only it's a great interview, this the thoughts you're sharing, but it's very timely, I think, with what's happening in the market. So I just, man, thank you for that. I got a follow-up question though, as you've gotten to know all these top producers, and you mentioned you mentioned Holly and other people, like you have a routine, right? So you have a routine you shared earlier, the meditation piece. Do you find that these strong originators, successful people have a routine that they follow no matter what? Do you find that in your coaching experiences that you have?
Well, I obviously don't know everybody. I can't speak to the people that I don't know. I would
Right. The
imagine
people you,
my
yeah,
guess would be, well, first of all, the definition of a routine, like I would
yeah,
imagine that anybody that's successful has a routine. I mean, we all have
right,
routines. I mean, when you evaluate it, I mean, every one of us does essentially the same thing when we wake up in the morning. I mean, we're routine
yeah,
by nature.
right,
If what you're asking is, do they have a routine that is by design, that is
correct,
supportive of them and healthy for them? No, I don't think most do. I think that, to your point earlier, I think this is something that's becoming more normal for people.
yeah,
People are starting to embrace. But when clients come to me and enter into our Leadership 360 coaching program, a lot of them are routine less, or let's just say it differently. They don't have a designed routine that is supportive of how they start their day.
mhm,
Um, and like Holly and I talked in my episode with her about her
mhm,
morning routine. She's very routine oriented, and I happen to know her really well, so I knew that she gets up at 4 a.m. and she has her whole
yep,
thing.
yep,
Um, I think it's important for everybody to understand that there's this sacred time that you have available to you in the day, which is your mornings. And some people's mornings are very short. They get up and within 15 minutes they are on. They're checking email, they're checking text, they've got the news on, they're listening to what's happening in CNBC with mortgage-backed securities, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, and the people that I find that are most successful are the ones who understand that, at the end of the day, your energy, there's only one person that can manage your energy, and that's you. That's it. Nobody can do it for you. You have to make that a priority. And how you start your day and the energy that you carry into your day has a dramatic impact on your success in your interactions with your team, in your interactions with your clients, in your interactions with your referral partners. Are you setting yourself up for success? So when the world starts throwing stuff at you that is difficult for you to manage, you actually have a foundation underneath you to handle that in a productive way. Or are you setting yourself up for failure? So when the world starts throwing stuff at you, you're in chaos. And the world
Right.
is going to throw stuff at you. So that's why I think it's so important. So Josh Metal, who is another guy that you should have on your show, by the way. He's a tremendous
Mhm.
teacher and a dear friend. Josh is kind of uh, my my benchmark for a great morning routine. He's a bit fanatical about it compared to most, and maybe a little bit more so than I want to be. But Josh is usually in bed between 7:30 and 8 o'clock at night,
Right.
and he gets up at like 4 a.m. and he's got his sacred time. I get up around 5,
Yeah.
and I don't. I think that the key thing is you have to ask yourself the question: when will you allow the outside world to infiltrate your life?
That's right.
So for me, my calendar, like this is an early Zoom for me at 8:30 a.m. Pacific when we're recording. I usually don't do anything work related until 9 a.m.
Mhm.
And that gives me 4 hours from 5 a.m. until 9 a.m. to do certain things that I know for me will set my day up correctly. Now, for everybody, it's different. You have to
That's
determine
right.
for yourself. So it could be working out, which I don't do in the morning. I generally do that mid-afternoon. But for me, it's meditation, it's journaling, it's prayer,
Mhm.
it's doing some stretching, some yoga, listening to some music that really centers me and mellows me out. It's calming in my
Yeah.
home. Um, and then I make myself some breakfast, and then I will generally pick one thing, and this is a key one that I want everybody to understand, is that I will pick one thing that will move the needle in my business that I will work on that morning before I open up my day to everybody else. So by the time the day ends, I at least know that I got one big thing done. It could be that I have somebody on my podcast and I want to write the questions for that and think through
Yeah.
how I want this interaction to go. Or it could be, that you want to call 3 people in your past client database and leave them voice messages just to let them know that you're thinking about them. But what's the one thing you want to get done today? And then the last thing that I've been doing lately, and it's fairly new for me, but it's been huge, is that when I go through my meditation and my prayer, I set a very clear intention as to who I want to be today. So today, this morning, I said, I want to be calm, I want to be present, and I want to teach from the heart. I have this podcast and I have another thing that I'm doing for a group of people in a couple of hours. And I set that as my intention. Now, at the end of the day, when I go to bed at night, when I hit the mattress, I do a quick review of how did I do today? And not from a perspective of condemnation, but from a perspective of curiosity. How did I do with being calm, present, and a heart-centered teacher? And if I am given the opportunity to be here tomorrow, because nothing is for sure, what would I do differently to improve upon that behavior? And sometimes I'll see, man, I was really off course all day long, but that one thing really tripped me up. Okay, next tomorrow, if I have another thing like that coming at me, I'm going to try to handle that a little bit differently, just for a daily check-in to just see how I'm doing with the areas that I want to
Mhm.
improve upon as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Tim, wow. Thank you. That's I had I had a vision in my head like of what I think you were gonna say. And like I was thinking, okay, Tim is probably an early guy, right? And everybody who is in the business I'm seeing is getting up earlier for some reason, has a routine. So thank you for being so specific on what you do, man, because um I think a lot of people, like you said, I don't know a lot, I don't know if a lot's the right word, but many people are seem to just get up and then go out their day. But if you're intentful, and what you said is the person you want to be today. And I was listening to something else you said. I know we're running out of time here, so I want to be respectful of that. But so I'm also hearing that time management is extremely important in your day, and choosing who to do podcasts with and how to spend your day is important to you as well. And I think as leaders, as originators, as people, sometimes you get stretched thin and you don't really get to that place that you wanted to be at for that day. So that's an important piece too, right? The time management and being able to say no. Is that a big piece of your of being a successful, a professional person originator?
Wow, man, we could do a whole nother episode on
That's
that.
a whole day. I know it is, right? Maybe we will. Maybe we will, right?
By the
But
way, that's really
yeah,
interesting too, because I was
yeah,
thinking as you were sharing that, I'm like, one of the things that trips me up a lot when it
yeah,
comes to getting up early in the morning is if the
yeah,
Dodgers are playing on the West Coast, because then
yeah,
like I'm usually not in bed until about 10, although the pitch
yeah,
clock has helped with that. Games are ending a little bit sooner, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, time management at the heart of time management is about getting clear on your hell yeses and your hell nos.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
And
right.
more important than that is, why do I say yes to something that's a hell no?
That's right.
And what's underneath that is almost always fear that if I say no to something that I don't want to do, that somehow I will fall out of favor, somebody will disappoint in me, some ball will get dropped, something won't happen that needs to happen, etc. So we've kind of come full circle, because when you talk about removing barriers at the top of this conversation, um,
Hmm.
boy, in the topic of time management, um, you know, drawing proper boundaries in one's life, getting really crystal clear on what are the things that I want to be saying yes to, and what are my blind spots. What are the things that I'm typically seduced into saying
Yep.
yes to that are actually not a hell yes for me? And how do I, so I'll give you a quick script on that, right?
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
this could be a good way to maybe wrap it up. And oh, by the
Yeah.
way,
Love it.
I prepared a bunch of scripts that are, I think, on a link in the show notes for the
We're
listeners.
gonna share those.
They can go
Yeah.
download, a lot of the things that they've
Thank
heard me
you.
say today. But this one's not in there, okay? But hopefully you can remember this or go back and
Yeah.
listen. So I've been working on this myself lately, which is somebody comes to me and they ask me to, will you, can we meet on this, or can I pick your brain on that, or just they ask me for my time, and I have been very conditioned to just say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm angry about it. And initially I realized I was angry with them. But then I
Mhm.
realized it really wasn't them that I was angry with. It was me that I was angry with, because I kept saying yes to things that I didn't want to say yes to. So in a deep rooted sort of way, I was abandoning my truth, right? I was abandoning myself. I was competing against me. So I was like, well, how do I get out of this mess? So I developed a script that I use pretty consistently now, is that if somebody asks me for my time, I want to buy time. I want to slow it down and buy time. So to think through, do I really want to commit to this? So I'll just say
Yeah.
the truth. The truth is easy as script. I'd say, Delfino, one of the things that I've been working on lately is not overcommitting my time, because it's really important for me to be present with whoever I have committed my time to. And I've been finding that I'm kind of racing from one thing to the next and not truly grounded and present with the person. And it's not fair to them
Mhm.
and it's not fair to me. So if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is just take 24 hours and get back to you, by the end of the day tomorrow, to let you know if I can commit to getting together with you on that. Would that be
Yeah.
okay? Now, number one, if the person says that's not okay, then they've actually answered my question for me, which is,
That's right.
oh, I don't want to get together with you because you're not a very
Yeah.
kind person, right?
Right.
But what I
Yeah.
hear actually a lot, like way more than 50% of the time, is, oh, wow, that's really cool that you're doing that. I have that problem too. Thanks for sharing that with me. That's something I need to do a better job of. Take 2 or 3 days if you need to. No rush. Get back to me when you can. See, we make up these stories in our head that we have to give people an immediate answer, and that answer must be yes. And if it isn't, they're going to be angry with us. And a lot of that is just bullshit.
Yeah.
But using a script like that to just slow it down, buy a little time, tell the truth, reevaluate, and then get back to the person can be really helpful in that case.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. It's very it's enlightening to him how you operate, man. Like it really is. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, yeah, no, obviously the loanatlas.com, we're gonna share those scripts. I was reviewing that also last night, and actually when I was listening to the podcast. If you haven't jumped on Tim's podcast, you gotta subscribe to him. A lot of great
Thank you.
information, 360 experience, right? It's the name of the
Yes.
podcast, Tim.
Yes. Yeah, it's on Spotify and Apple and YouTube.
And YouTube too. So Tim, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Tim? To learn about Tim, go to your website. Is that the best site, or what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, www.performance-experts.com is my coaching company.
Mm-hmm.
And theloanatlas.com is our e-learning platform that you can also get a hold of me through as well. And then you can follow me on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I mean, I have a Facebook page, but somebody else runs it. I'm never on there. So
Okay.
don't go there.
Instagram.
You'll think that I'm like blowing you off and I'm not. So you can IM me on Instagram if you want, and I can get back to you. Yeah. Be happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome, Tim. Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to have you down in San Diego, Tim, for a Padre game. I'm a season ticket holder with the Dodgers. So next Padre Dodgers, we got to hook up.
I would
All
love
right.
that, bro. That would be really fun. I've never been to Petco.
You haven't? Okay,
No, and
now we got to
I've been
do
to
it.
like probably 12 stadiums, but not
Yeah.
that one for some reason, which is weird because it's not that far of a drive. That would be great.
Yeah, cool. So we'll hook up on that for sure. So listen, Tim, thanks again, man.
Thank you, brother.
Genuinely one of the greatest humans out there right now, man. Thank you for your time on this. I appreciate everybody liked our episode. We're kicking off season 6 strong with a strong at bat with Tim here today. So thank you, Tim. We appreciate you. And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.